Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural TEDx Cathedral Catholic High School. Yeah, that's right. 5 years ago, I imagined this event, and now we're all sitting here together. Tonight is a celebration of the vision, dedication, and talents of the TEDx Student Committee and speakers, but it's also an example of the power of project-based learning to inspire, educate, and empower students, something Mr. Smith and I are both very passionate about. Now I'm going to hand the mic off to Mr. Smith, who's going to do the event dedication. After that, the students are going to take over because tonight is all about them.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming. We're just so happy that you're here. What you're going to hear tonight is you're going to see some of the wonderful students we have at Cathedral. This is my second year here, and one thing I learned right away is that this school has really, really wonderful students and families. You're going to see speakers tonight, students with incredible wisdom, incredible heart, incredible courage. But there's one student we want to spotlight. There's one student, Alex, one of our speakers, who's sick. He was sick last year and still is this year. And him and his family, they just have faced these unforeseen, these unbelievable, like terrifying challenges with such extraordinary wisdom, heart, and courage. So tonight we want to dedicate the evening to Alex, and we want to start with prayer. So Nyla, one of our student directors, has written a beautiful prayer for us, and she's gonna lead us. Welcome, Nyla.
Before we begin the talks, let us pray. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, we search for truth. We believe that TED is a platform for spreading ideas, for connecting people from different walks of life, and for inspiring change. May this event serve as a source of hope and inspiration as we gather to listen and learn from one another. May the talks that we hear challenge us to think deeply, to question our assumptions, and to seek the truth. May we leave this event with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to use our gifts and talents for the greater good. And may we always remember that we are called to be people of love, embracing all who cross our path with compassion and kindness. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now, Ted has asked us to begin with this welcome video.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Now please welcome RMCs for the evening, Blake and Brady.
I'm Blake, and this is Brady. Welcome to TEDx. Let me set a few expectations for the event. Please stay quiet, as a professional crew will pick up even the smallest sounds, which may ruin the recordings. Please stay in your seats and exit only between speakers. Feel free to clap, hoot, or maybe even holler at the end of each speaker.
Please make sure to stay for the entire event. We want to make sure that each and every one of our speakers feels appreciated.
Also, please refrain from capturing pictures or taking videos while the speakers are presenting. Instead, focus on being present and listening to each speaker. We promise that we will share all of our professional quality videos and photos on our Instagram.
And if you haven't already, please follow our Instagram at TEDx Cathedral Catholic High School. We love when you guys like and share our content.
Up first to the TEDx stage is Miss Jessica Swift Lambrell. She's the director of music at Cathedral and the conductor and theory instructor at San Diego Youth Symphony. She is so grateful to interact with students of all skill and age levels. She has students from 9 years old and even students that are 90 years old. Some of her professions include educator, conductor, performer, clinician, and composer. Some of the highlights from her career are national and regional conferences, Moonlight Amphitheater, Balboa Park, Carnegie Hall, and Walt Disney Concert Hall. She received her bachelor degree in music education from Colorado Boulder and Master of Music from UCLA. In her talk, she explores how we can take more ownership in our interactions in order to achieve more positive outcomes. Please welcome our first speaker, Miss Jessica Swift Lambrell.
Good evening. Have you ever wondered what a conductor does? We come out here, we wave our arms, the music happens. Clearly, they didn't need me to start the piece. They didn't need me to stay together, but there's something enhanced in this collaboration. Early in music education, if you ever tried to learn an instrument at a young age, you might remember your music teacher looking a little like an air traffic controller. Trying to keep them together. They've got to watch. We're hoping they play the right notes. Hey-ya. And then, as they mature and they learn, the sound refines and the gesture can match. And then with a little coordination and rehearsal behind the scenes, even something as simple as a major scale can sound musical. This is a craft I've been practicing for a long time, Wingardium Leviosa. No, just kidding. Music is magic, though, isn't it? But it's just a medium. And early in my career, I remember really digging into the repertoire, into the scores, and doing all that musical study, which is important. But at some point, I realized that while I am a music conductor who presumably conducts music, I'm ultimately a much more effective conductor if I focus on the fact that I'm conducting people. Tonight, I'm going to teach you how to be conductors. It's about energy. Would you allow me to demonstrate with you as my ensemble? Yes. Excellent. You're hired. All right. I can't see you very well, but go ahead and make some sound. Any sound, drum around you, clap, make something auditory. That's great. Now we'll do it together, and I'm going to show you some direction in between the start and the stop. So when the baton, this little stick, points to you, go ahead and increase your volume. Ready? Here we go. Very intuitive. You did a great job. So we had to start, we had to stop, we had some direction in between. That's a lot of energy. So forget about music and think about energy. Energy is something we all have. We all need it, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual. And so how do we work with this? It's something we're actually emitting out into the world all the time as well. The young people like to use the word vibes, and I think that's really appropriate. So when I'm looking at a piece of music, I'm looking for these moments that there might be some sort of energetic interaction. In the little excerpt that we played at the beginning, there were 72 pulses, 72 counts, so that could be 72 possible places where the rhythm, melody, or harmony might do something interesting. As people, we interact all the time. If you do a deep dive into Google, you might find that the average person interacts with about 12 people per day. Less active people might interact with around 2,000 people per year, and those of us that work with people in our careers might interact with over 500,000 people in our lifetime. So think about some of the interactions that you've had in the past 24 hours, maybe the last week. There's all kinds of interactions that we experience in our everyday life. Some interactions might be planned. Many interactions are actually unplanned. Some interactions are intense. Some are pleasant. Some are social. Some are hesitant, awkward, confusing. Some are solid, and some are subtle. And while a lot of these interactions might be seemingly insignificant, as a musician who sees music as a metaphor for so many bigger things, I know that they're not. Because if I look at a piece of music, I know that all of those notes matter. And more pertinently, if I look at my ensemble, I know that all of these people matter. So if we take another piece of music, Sibelius's Finlandia, and I purposefully asked a student or two to hit a note just a little bit sourly, see if you can tell. You probably don't know the song, or maybe you do, but you could tell that third note, not quite there. Now if we play it correctly. And so with that concerted effort to make something beautiful, we all matter, even if it seems like we're doing something that's a little bit small. So be the conductor in your life and find those moments where you can engage with that energy that we're always emitting and where you can contribute with your interaction. We practice a lot of gestures as conductors. Sometimes I prepare a lot before rehearsal, but most of what I do in the rehearsal might actually be reactive, finding moments to make space for the less obvious voice or for breath in the music. There's also a piece of conducting, though, that has nothing to do with all this or all the preparation. It's just about what it means to be a person. Years ago, I had the opportunity to conduct at an international music festival at Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles. I happened to be working at a high school nearby at the time, and we got a phone call from a touring agency. there were 3 schools from China that wanted to come over to the US, rent out this amazing place, and play American music alongside an American band. So we said, that sounds pretty cool. We'll do that, yep. And we did. And the event was beautiful. The 3 bands from China performed first. They played a lot of really fun music. They played the Beach Boys, Phantom of the Opera, film soundtracks. They had choreography while they were playing, and it was all very technically perfect. I don't know if our music was quite as polished, to tell you the truth, but I'm really proud about what we did that day. The piece that I conducted was entitled An American Elegy. I chose this piece for 2 reasons. The first is it's composed by Frank Tekeli, who's a living and local composer. Frank Tekeli is a professor at the University of California, Southern California, excuse me. And the other reason that I chose this piece is because it was personal to me. An American Elegy was commissioned after the 1999 Columbine shooting in memory of the victims and the survivors. I know this piece well because I'm from Littleton, Colorado, and I remember that day, I remember how it affected my community, and I remember how I would learn that it affected the world as I grew older. I would later on go on to study with some of the people that were responsible for bringing this piece to life. And so when I had the opportunity to choose an American piece, this to me was one that was quite profound. Although the event that the piece was written for is quite haunting, Tekeli transforms it into something beautiful and makes it about hope. And I don't know how refined my gestures were as a young conductor all those years ago, but I do know that the music came through, because after the event, all 3 of the directors from China came up to me independently, and while we couldn't understand each other's language, they asked me about that piece, and I could see the emotion had washed over their faces, and they understood that that was something real, that there was an artistry there that meant something. And so that day, music transcended all language barriers. As conductors, we can practice many gestures. We can prepare for the planned, for the unplanned. We can strive to react in ways that are compassionate and graceful for the unexpected. We can make space for those less obvious voices and give breath to the music. The world's become very loud, hasn't it? And many of our interactions are a little bit manufactured. But if we can find that place of authenticity and really come from it, I think we'll find that we not only are able to speak our stories, but hear the stories of others and really find some truth. And by engaging in that energy, in the interactions and the authenticity, we might just find ourselves living in more beautiful moments more often.
Up next is Gavin Alt. Gavin is a sophomore from Solana Beach. At Cathedral, Gavin is on the basketball team and the leader of the Investing Club. In his free time, Gavin loves to surf, play the guitar, and hang out with friends. After high school, Gavin plans on majoring in business. A fun fact about Gavin is that he loves to follow the latest stock trends and the latest Nike shoe drops. In his talk, Gavin will be exploring the pursuit of happiness. Please welcome to the TEDx stage, Gavin Alt.
My current resting heart rate is 55 beats per minute. Last night, I got 8 hours of sleep, with 1.5 of them being in REM. My stocks are up 1.5%, and I got 250 likes on my recent Instagram post. American society tells me that all these things are so important that I need to have 24/7 access to them right here on my watch. This is what measures success. Numbers I can track and pursue, telling me if I'm winning at the game of life. But what if American society was wrong? That it's not about these measurables that we can track and compare to others, but it's about something bigger, something far more simple, that it's about being happy. The World Happiness Report, released in 2022, which ranks countries based on things like GDP, social support, and life expectancy, revealed that the United States of America ranked a mere 16th on the list. Countries with less wealth, innovation, and resources dwarf the US in overall happiness rankings. And interestingly, all of these countries practice similar things, but most importantly, they all actively pursued happiness. Author and entrepreneur Jim Rohn once said, "Happiness is not by chance, but by choice." We cannot just sit back and let life happen to us. Rather, we need to create a gauge for our well-being and do what we can to move the needle. While this may prove some, including those who have mental illnesses or other physical or mental illnesses, for the majority of us, there are many steps we can take to actively increase our happiness. I have many goals in life: academic goals, sports goals, and goals for my future. But there is one goal that seems to be overshadowed by the rest of them, and that is the goal to be happy. People don't usually think about whether or not their daily actions are affecting their overall well-being. I certainly didn't think of it as a priority until I decided to study the science behind happiness and the strategies of how to apply it into my daily life. It has been shown that being happy can provide many health benefits, including an increase in heart health and reduction in cortisol levels, a stress hormone that is released in the brain and can cause many negative side effects. In addition, the English study of longevity found that people who are happier late in life had a 35% chance of living longer than those who are unhappy. So you may be wondering, how can I live a happier life? Well, one way is by creating more meaningful social connections. 2 psychologists created a study where they split people up into 2 different groups: people who are happy and people who are unhappy, and measured their social connections and how deep they were. And there was a common theme. The people who were happier had more, deeper social connections, ranging from friends, family, relationships, and more, showing how important it is that we go out and make connections with the people around us, as it could result in us living a happier life. Another way we can increase our happiness is by spending more time outdoors and in nature. The University of Berkeley published an article highlighting how people who spent more time outdoors and in nature were not only happier, but were also more creative and less stressed. For me, I like to spend time outdoors by taking my dog for walks or going surfing. A third way we can increase our happiness is by spending less time on screens. The American Psychology Association created a study that started around the mid-20th century, which measured teen overall well-being. But right around the year 2012, they found that teen well-being began to decrease. They found that teens who spent more time on their phones and social media were less happy and more stressed than their peers who weren't spending as much time. When it comes to pursuing happiness, it takes being proactive rather than reactive. In an effort to see what pursuing happiness looks like in my own life, I decided to create my own personal happiness experiment. I split it up into 2 different time periods. In the first, I lived out my normal life and went about my usual daily routines. But in the second week, I did everything in my power to actively pursue happiness to the fullest. I even signed up for an online college course through Yale University on the science of happiness, and was even assigned happiness homework, which included practicing acts of kindness and gratitude. In addition to this, I spent a minimum of 30 minutes outside every day, going on hikes or playing basketball in my driveway. One day, I picked up my phone to check the surf forecast, but immediately put it down. I decided to go check the waves in person. When I got there, the waves weren't great, but I decided to paddle out anyway. I had an amazing session, and towards the end, I found myself sitting on my board and looking out at the sunset, and I felt a sense of calmness and gratitude and just being present in this moment. I even went to the happiest place on earth, Disneyland, although I quickly realized that rides that spin very fast in a circle do not make me happy. I was with the people I enjoy being around and cherish. And as a result of all this, I found that my screen time decreased 33%. My mood was more upbeat, my energy levels were higher, and my sleep increased in both quality and in duration. And when it came time for the well-being check I had to record at the end of each day, I found that I was scoring higher in all areas. I felt a sense of winning at life rather than merely surviving. We are all the authors of our own life experience. And if we don't actively enrich our lives, then we can waste minutes, days, and even years of this journey that has no simple recipe for happiness. When we pursue happiness, we are feeding ourselves the antidote to an unhealthy, bland life. It's not the good grades, the piles of money, or the likes to your social media posts that truly do the job. So grab a friend, head to the beach, take your sibling to get ice cream, turn off your phone, and watch what happens. It might take some extra time out of your day, or cost a few extra dollars, but you'll find that you're happier than what you were before. How to feel good and be happy is not a mystery. We know what it takes. My journey continues. Join me and start today. Thank you.
Up next to the TEDx stage is Lily O'Shaughnessy. She's a sophomore from Solana Beach, and her favorite parts about Cathedral is being on the swim team and the drama tech team. Outside of Cathedral, she loves to swim, dance, go to the beach, and hang out with her sister. She plans to attend college and major in something to do with either math or science. A fun fact about Lily is that she was born in New York City. In her talk, she explores the question, can you be happy with a mental illness or mental disorder? Please welcome to the TEDx stage, Lily O'Shaughnessy.
Hi, my name is Lily O'Shaughnessy, and today I'm here to tell you that for people with mental illness, there is hope for happiness. First, I want to share with you a poem that I wrote about 1 year ago when I had been seemingly consumed by multiple clinically diagnosed mental illnesses and mental health disorders. Now, I'm not really a poet, but to sum it up, here are a few lines that accurately depict how I was feeling. See, my thoughts don't just stop. They keep going and controlling. Even when I try to avoid them, they hold me down. These lines from this poem provide a great sense of how mental illness can really negatively affect a person. Mental health issues can be debilitating. They can force their way into a person's life, just like an unwanted guest at a house party. They force their way into the center of the dance floor, and they dominate the space for a while. But even though mental illness may seem like an unwanted party guest, does that mean that mental illness has to ruin the party? People with mental illness can be happier. They can actually be happy. People should focus on the truthful and constructive nature of psychology and mental illness, because this will ultimately decrease the stigma surrounding mental illness and encourage this idea that people with mental illness can be happy. Ever since May became Mental Health Month in 1949, the awareness surrounding mental illness and mental health has skyrocketed, and I'm all for that. But I want to ensure that the focus that society puts on mental illness and mental health is accurate. Just a quick preface. This idea that people with mental illness can be happy is not meant to underplay anybody who struggles with mental illness, because I know from personal experience that they are real and difficult. For some, it may currently seem like there is little to no light at the end of their mental health journey, but there is hope. I'm here today because I hope to disprove the stigma that having a mental illness removes any possibility of living a life full of light, a life
full of hope. So imagine or relate to this. For the past couple of months, you've been exhibiting signs of a certain mental illness or mental health disorder. So you decide to go talk to a professional about it, which, if you're experiencing something off, this is something that I highly recommend doing. So you go talk to this professional, and they give you a clinical diagnosis of that certain mental illness or mental health disorder. Once you leave your session, you're probably thinking to yourself, A, does this mean that something is wrong with me? Or B, does this mean that I can't be happy? I know that these have been thoughts that have drifted in and out of my head for years. To give you some background, in first grade, I was diagnosed with OCD and GAD, or obsessive compulsive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. When I first received this diagnosis, I was afraid that it would make my life completely miserable. And for a while, it did, and I lost the hope that it would get any better. But then I worked hard through exposure therapy, and I deepened my understanding. Once I realized that there was hope for happiness, I became way more optimistic. In fact, here are some pictures of me from 2013 and 2014. I was presenting the universal sign of authentic happiness, an authentic smile. I was happy, despite having multiple mental illnesses. So if there's hope for little Lily, there's hope for you too. Mark Stebeck, a PhD and behavior change expert, explains that you can boost your happiness by focusing on positive things and reducing your negative thinking. If you focus on happier things, for me that's hanging out with my younger sibling, then you'll be happier. We can apply this idea to psychology and mental illness to help encourage this idea that people with mental illness can actually be happy. Now, everybody bear with me. Please reach out both of your hands. Pretend that each hand represents a different version of yourself that you retain. Your left hand represents the authentic version of yourself. This is the side of yourself that is not affected by any contradicting situations or ideals. This is the positive side of yourself. Now, your right hand represents the side of yourself that is constantly negatively affected. This is the unauthentic side of yourself, the side of yourself that is constantly affected by contradicting situations and ideals. You can put your hands together now. Now, this is the version of yourself that appears to other people. This is positive and negative. You can put your hands down. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, your hands just represented Carl Rogers' theory, an optimistic approach to psychology and mental illness. The key takeaway from this is that there is always a positive, happy, authentic side of yourself within you. And although it's occasionally overrun by mental illness, there is still hope for happiness. This leads me to my last point, that mental illness is not one's entire identity. It is only one aspect of a person's overall character, personality, health, and in all aspects of a person's life. This can be illustrated through the umbrella approach to mental health. Mental illness is a burden, and it's really hard to deal with. One aspect of a person's mental health, we should strive to focus on the things that make us happy. There are many aspects of our lives that make us happy, so focus on those. As the number of people with mental illness grows, so does the awareness surrounding mental illness. People should continue to speak out about their stories with mental illness, just as I am doing today, because I truly believe that this will help to start shape a more informed, more compassionate, and more positive understanding of mental illness within society. It will also help encourage this idea that for people with mental illness, there is hope for happiness. Thank you.
Up next is Alex Polifka. Alex is a sophomore who was born in Seattle, but has lived most of his life in San Diego. Some of the things that Alex loves about Cathedral is the high level of education offered and the immense amount of opportunities for him to grow his faith. Alex is involved with the Amelia's Christi and Dawns for Life Club on campus. Some things that Alex loves to do is try new food, listen to 80s music, watch 80s movies, play rugby, and travel. In Alex's talk, he will be exploring the trials of illness and the power of faith. Please welcome to the TEDx stage, Alex Polifka.
These are my glimpses of God that I've seen in my experience. I'm not an expert in anything. Actually, I'm not good at anything. I don't play sports. I don't take EP classes. I don't dance. I don't sing. I'm not rich. I'm not handsome. Well, maybe that last one. So, you all must be wondering, why am I here? I'm here because of 3 words doctors told me. And I'm going to tell you my story. On December 31st, 2020, while everybody else was out celebrating, I was told these horrible words. That was the day my life changed forever. You have cancer. 3 words nobody ever wants to hear. Just saying the word cancer doesn't necessarily carry that much meaning. But being told you have cancer changes your entire world. When hearing these horrible words, you have cancer, I have thought of pain, suffering, agony, and possibly death. And at 14 years old, I had to confront this face to face. Is there a cure? Can I survive? How long do I have left? As my journey as a cancer patient began, I became more familiar with Jack. That's what we named my cancer, Jack. And we even have a special song for him. Oh.
Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
And Jack sure is special. Jack is a rare type of cancer called synovial sarcoma and it's a soft tissue cancer and affects 1 in a million people. As the battle with Jack began, Rady's Children's Hospital became my second home. Synovial sarcoma is, like I said, so rare that I had to be transferred to St. Jude's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, for them to perform the first set of surgeries. They went extremely well. Since then, I've had 7 rounds of chemotherapy, 36 sessions of radiation. It looked promising. Even my hair was growing again. We were celebrating the end of the treatment. Besides my surgery being very successful, I got to witness how the generosity and hard work of a few people can go a long way. St. Jude's Hospital is a completely free hospital. They only treat really rare cases that cannot be treated back home. In a way, I was lucky that I qualified. I got the best team to work on me to do the surgery. Cancer is something beyond my control. I didn't do anything wrong to get it. It was given to me as a gift. Yes, an unwanted gift that can't be returned, exchanged, or given away. And it was a gift in the form of a cross. And unfortunately, it was a gift that kept on giving. The way my cancer behaves, it can go to the brain or to the lungs. So, the doctors were carefully monitoring it. And of course, they found nodules in my lungs. The nodules were malignant. The cancer had metastasized. I would have to start all over again. I was angry. I was mad. The fear, the uncertainty of the future, the fear, the constant falling down and getting back up again made me angry. but somehow God is always giving me strength to continue smiling, continue having hope, continue living like I don't have cancer. If anything, it brought me closer to God. One of my favorite quotes is by Saint Jose Maria Escriva. At times, the cross appears without our looking for it. It is Christ who is seeking us out. Throughout this process, I learned that God is in whatever circumstances we encounter ourselves in, even more when we are suffering. I learned how loved I am by my family, my friends, my school, my community, and by my church. There are people from all over the world praying for me, and we all pray that it's God's will to heal me. And as I stand here and tell you about it, my health is still a mess and unsolved. I'm not cured, as I'm still getting treatment, waiting for test results telling me if I'm closer to dying or to be blessed to continue living. So, whether my story touches some of you, inspires you to get closer to God, put your trust in God's goodness, then my miraculous recovery or my death have a purpose, and they're not in vain. Thank you.
Great job out there, Alex. Next up is Alyssa Rusnak. Alyssa is a sophomore from Cathedral, born in Virginia, but has been living in Carmel Valley for over half her life. What she loves about Cathedral is being part of the drama tech team and also music departments. She loves going to the theater with family, playing volleyball, and learning about space. In college, she plans to study science, and one fact about her is that she wants to go scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef one day. In her talk, she explains the joys of making music. Please welcome to the stage, Alyssa Rusnak.
The summer before 5th grade, my mom took me to a petting zoo. No, not the type of petting zoo you're thinking of. This petting zoo was for instruments. Trust me, I don't know why it's called a petting zoo, but that's what the event is called, where new students get to try out all the band instruments and pick out the one they like the most. Most music stores hold these events towards the start of the school year, and eager future musicians are given a chance to try them all out, are given a quick demo, and are given little tricks on how to hold it. Then, once you get through them all, with the taste of instrument sanitizer in your mouth, you kind of get a feel for which one would be fun to play. Initially, I had my heart set on the violin, like most kids, but the ensemble I would be joining was wind only, so I settled for the flute. I'm so glad I did, because I really learned to love it, and its small size, definitely a plus. Do you want to hear what a bunch of 5th graders sound like a week after getting their instruments? I didn't think so. Well, you don't get a choice. I hope your ears don't bleed. While it's completely normal for brand new musicians to sound bad, and sound bad for quite some time, the benefits of music are so much more rewarding when you stick with it. Fast forward to 6th grade. I've been playing my flute for 2 years, having the time of my life every Monday after school. I found myself tuning out the lengthy lectures our director would give us. Sorry, Mr. Glasson. Instead, I was daydreaming about what it would be like to be a professional musician. He would constantly tell us how difficult the music path is to pursue, but how incredibly rewarding it is for those that are brave enough to follow through with it. Of course, he was right, and I'm glad I was paying attention to his lecture that day. Hi, my name is Alyssa Rusnak, and I'm going to share with you the importance of musicians in society, why it's never too late to become one, and hopefully find your motivation to make music. Have any of you ever played an instrument? Do you remember playing the recorder in 3rd grade? Yeah, some of you loved it, and some of you hated it. I know there was also many of you who were forced to take piano lessons as a child. But did you ever enjoy it? Fantasize about playing at Carnegie Hall, where your piano teacher got frustrated with you for not having good posture? What about those of you who listened to rock music in your bedroom, jamming out to the air guitar, with dreams of playing at Madison Square Garden or the Hollywood Bowl? Every single one of you has dreamed of being a musician. Listening to music is fun, but there's a neurological benefit to actually playing an instrument. It's good for your brain, and it's even better for society. Listening to music only requires one half of the brain, while playing an instrument requires both halves of the brain to work together. When both hemispheres of the brain are used at the same time, it must work harder, allowing the synapses in our brain to strengthen, resulting in a better memory. Another reason us musicians have a better memory than the average Joe is because of a technique we use when learning music called chunking. Basically, it's taking a chunk of music and breaking it down into smaller parts or simpler rhythms to play. This technique can be deployed in any aspect of school or life where you must break down a complicated piece of information and condense it down into only the stuff that really matters. Additionally, TED-Ed has shared studies which show that musicians process information quicker and more efficiently than non-musicians. This makes us great trivia teammates. When playing an instrument, your brain engages practically every area at once, especially the visual, auditory, and motor cortices. Through these connections made in our brain every time we practice, we have a stronger brain to use in other aspects of our life. Music isn't the glue that holds everything together. Music is the graffiti on the walls of society. It's a form of self-expression that not only is important for the individual, but so important to be spread. Music defines cultures and creates unexpected connections. Aside from the neurological benefits we get from playing an instrument, being able to express yourself is arguably one of the most valuable assets. To quote Billy Joel, an icon in the music industry, music in itself is healing. It's an explosive expression of humanity. It's something we're all touched by. No matter what culture we're from, everyone loves music. In communities around the globe, musicians might be most valuable in the places that lack power, the places that suffer from poverty, and the places where people feel voiceless. It's musicians who comfort the suffering, and it's their music that speaks for society. We've all been to petting zoos when we were kids, and it's nothing to be ashamed of to go to one when you're older either. Some of them are for animals, and others are for instruments. If you decide to pick up an instrument, don't expect perfection right away. Just like any hobby or passion, you have to work at it to improve. You'll probably sound like we did back in 5th grade when you first start, but the benefits of music are so much more rewarding when you persevere. And if you find that music maybe isn't for you, that's okay. Support those pursuing their dreams of becoming musicians so kids like me don't have to be afraid of the rocky futures ahead of us, so we can see something more solid in our futures. Doing little things as simple as attending local concerts at your local school or donating to their music program can make such a huge difference. Or attending concerts, not just to huge arena artists, but to the little ones just starting out their career at local venues or coffee shops. With the support from you musicians, or just enjoyers of the art, musicians can flourish like they never have before and be the focus of change. Thank you.
Amazing job, Alyssa. Next up is Lucas Karakitan. Lucas is a sophomore who was born in the Bay Area, but was raised in San Diego. Lucas plays on the football team and the basketball team. When he's not playing sports, he loves to hang out with his friends and family. A fun fact about Lucas is that he has a pet dog named Leo. Lucas plans to going to college out of state and studying architecture or marketing. In Lucas's talk, he will be exploring the connection between imposter syndrome and discrimination. Please welcome to the TEDx stage my mentee, Lucas Karakitan.
Thank you. Almost everyone has felt self-doubt, inadequacy, and negative self-talk in their head. I know I have. Being cut from your favorite sport, being compared to kids with straight A's. They're always seen to be people that are perfect in every way. And this may take a toll on how you perceive yourself. You guys all have a syndrome. And today, I'm here to talk about that and to also, give you a rundown on how it works. So I did more research on what this was, and it actually has a name. It's called imposter syndrome. Raise your hand right now if any of you guys have heard of that term. Right. You guys just proved my point on how not really many people know about this. So when I did this quick Google search, this definition came up. A psychological occurrence in which a person doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and have a persistent internalized feeling of being exposed as frauds. This idea of fraudulence and an unwarranted sense of insecurity is incredibly common among people and is the backbone of imposter syndrome. But this thing is actually really prevalent among underrepresented groups, women and people of color. The truth behind imposter syndrome. There are three main things I want to talk about today. Number one, who is most impacted by imposter syndrome? Number two, why and what are the causes of that? And three, its importance. So when researching this imposter syndrome, these psychologists named Susanna Eanes and Pauline Rose Clance actually came up with it in the 1970s. And in their definition, what caught my attention the most was how it specifically stated that it was prevalent among high-achieving women. This study was done over 50 years ago, yet not much has really changed since then. Why is that? Because these imposter syndrome feelings lead to things such as self-sabotage of your own success and feeling disappointed when you fall short of your goals. And there may be people saying, oh, yeah, that's not true, imposter syndrome is fake, but that's not the case. As studies have shown that every 7 in 10 adults have experienced imposter syndrome at some point. So that means you guys, the audience, for every 10 of you, 7 of you guys have had these feelings before. I'm Filipino American. It's my heritage. And this is my mom. She's really loving and kind and has done so much for me and my family. And she has been in cases, she works in compensation, and she has been in cases where companies have been paying men more than women and people of color, even though they have the same job, same experience, same background, and same performance, all due to the inequality that still exists in our world. A 2019 survey by Glassdoor shares that 42% of US employees have seen racism at work, and that another study has shown that every 3 in 5 minority employees have felt that people judge their ability to work based on their ethnicity. People marginalized in society believe that their value and success are determined by their work ethic, and that these ideas of being underrepresented is really what's causing them to have these feelings, but it's actually discrimination. These people are feeling these feelings of imposter syndrome when it's actually racial bias. I like to use this analogy of a mask. Imposter syndrome is masking discrimination, and instead blaming the individual for what they're feeling instead of the collective, the actions of others. So what? Why am I telling you all of this? The only way to really combat imposter syndrome is to talk about it. In fact, many of us have this pluralistic ignorance, It's mostly a fancy term for saying that we don't really feel that we doubt ourselves, and that we're the only reasons we're the only people who doubt ourselves, and that other people don't think that way. But that's not the case, though. The only reason why this happens is because we're scared to be vulnerable. We're scared to be open about what we feel. And so these things like imposter syndrome plague our minds. I know, a lot of this is hard. What I'm throwing at you is really confusing. Like, I've been trying to explain this to people I've known for months, and they don't really understand it. But I think I figured out the best way to summarize it. Imposter syndrome is an internal feeling within. It's your inner thinking, while discrimination is caused by the actions of others. Let's call it an external feeling. If an action is external or caused by the actions of others, it had to be taught at some point. We weren't taught with these ideas, and that's the problem. My middle school teacher once taught me that being a bystander is part of the problem. So in this instance, ignoring the racial and discriminative biases that exist in our world today is the same thing as being the people who actively perpetuate their ideals. I end my talk with this. Women and people deserve to live in a world unbiased to race and gender. People need to recognize the symptoms of discrimination and the difference between discrimination and imposter syndrome so that they can get the help that suits them. And I challenge you. I challenge you all to go look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, and tell yourself that everything you have ever done was the result of your own hard work and nothing else. Thank you.
Great job, Lucas. So, next up is Hong An Fan. She's born and raised in Carlsbad and is a junior at Cathedral. At Cathedral, she takes journalism too, which she loves. And outside of school, she loves to try new foods and go to the ice skating rink with her friends. She plans on majoring in journalism in either New York or LA. In her talk, she explores the question, where are you from? Please welcome to the TEDx stage, Hong An Fan.
On the first day of 7th grade, I sat down on a lab bench next to a boy that I had never met before. Now, I don't remember if I'd introduced myself or if he'd been the first one to talk, but what I do remember is something he asked me. Where are you from? So I answered, California. But then he asked me, but where are you from? And so I said, you want to know what my ethnicity is? And he said yes, and proceeded to guess a multitude of countries, starting with China, to Japan, to Korea, to Mongolia, to Thailand, to Taiwan, completely putting my geography skills to shame. When I told him I'm Vietnamese, he asked me shocked, did I really forget Vietnam? Children of immigrants are not the product of one nation, but rather the product of multiple competing cultures. This wasn't the first time that I'd been asked, where are you from? And it certainly wouldn't be the last time either. In fact, if I was given a nickel every time somebody asked me, where are you from, I could probably afford to go to Vietnam for the first time. I'd never even been there, so I couldn't respond to people when they'd say things like, oh, I heard it was beautiful there, or do you like the pho there? You can assume a lot of things about me. For one, my name. Hong An. It doesn't necessarily scream American. If anything, it's the first thing about me that immediately attracts attention. You'd assume that I was foreign, different. As a Vietnamese American person, I've been ostracized and alienized my entire life. My parents were from Vietnam, and I was from America, so clearly I looked and acted different from them, and I was different from the American population that lived here as well. Excuse me. My name, Hong Gan. It doesn't necessarily scream American. If anything, it's the first thing about me that immediately attracts attention. You'd assume that I was foreign. As a hyphenated person, Vietnamese American, I have two versions of myself that often clash. On one hand, my family expects me to abide by their cultural expectations, and on the other, people I meet often ostracize me and label me as a foreigner. Children of immigrants are not the product of one place, but rather the product of multiple competing cultures. Where my family is from will tell you very little about who I am. Vietnamese expectations are very different from American expectations. For one, there's a very apparent emphasis on material wealth. Money is the only surefire way to see that you've made it in life, and that's why you hear the exaggerated but not completely untrue stereotype of Asian mothers who want their kids to be doctors or lawyers or engineers or even presidents. American expectations, on the other hand, are much less extreme. The basic expectation is for you to follow the American dream and your passions. The money will come back, but the time won't. That's why my parents were attracted into this country. They are living proof of the stability that it promises to immigrants. Over 130,000 Vietnamese refugees fled the country during the Vietnam War. My mom was one of them. Nguyen Kim Sun is the epitome of a war-torn immigrant. Born during the height of the Vietnam War, she was the youngest of 10 siblings and escaped the country last. It wasn't until her older brother secretly fled the country that her mother realized the severity of the country's state. My grandmother watched as her children were smuggled out of the country, some being arrested multiple times when their escape plans were exposed. My own mom refused to leave until my grandmother's unexpected passing left her with no other choice. When she sailed away from her home country with nothing but the sack on her back, she dreamt of freedom on a distant shore. She drifted along coasts for weeks, arriving at the Philippines and later Australia, and it wasn't for years afterwards that she would come to America, striving for prosperity and hoping to be reunited with her siblings. She struggled a foreign battle alone, having nothing to her name, but soon she would meet her husband, another Vietnamese immigrant who had come to America years before her. My dad, Phan Phu Nhan, known as Nan to Americans, arrived in Oklahoma at the young age of 14, the typical age of a high school freshman. Although he was given more of an advantage than my mom, getting to learn English at a relatively young age, sacrifices were still expected to be made. He was separated from his siblings, who were sent to Canada, and years after he arrived in Oklahoma, he learned that his older brother had passed while trying to flee the country. His high school years were wasted in low-paying jobs while his classmates were living out their American-born privileges. Instead of going to high school dances, he spent the nights tucked in the back of a Mexican restaurant washing dishes. It's clear to see why immigrants place such an apparent emphasis on material wealth. It's to make up for the poverty and powerlessness that they have felt, and the hope of experiencing the privileges that come with money. I was born a Vietnamese girl in America. I looked Vietnamese, I learned Vietnamese ideals, and I spoke Vietnamese. But when I was shipped off to English-speaking public schools, I began to lose my culture. My uncle used to tell me I was like a banana, yellow on the outside, white on the inside. He told me that I looked Vietnamese, but I acted American. But when I went to predominantly white schools, my classmates would tell me things like, "Oh, I didn't know that you spoke English." Stereotypically Asian-based questions like, "Oh, where are you from?" were not new to me. What my classmates didn't know was that I was barely in contact with my own culture. The closest I could get to feeling Vietnamese was when my family braved the 1-hour drive to Little Saigon in Westminster. And that was when I felt inherently Vietnamese. But when I returned home, I'd find that my Vietnamese and American identities could not coexist. There is no shortage of assumptions from either side of the hyphen. So what have I learned about myself these past few years? For one, I'm not American, and I'm not Vietnamese. I'm not either. Or I could be both. I could be Vietnamese and American, or I could be myself, the individual without the label. We as a society need to be more open-minded when approaching someone new. Asking them questions like, "Where are you from?" won't tell you anything you need to know about them. Instead, we need to learn to talk to others without retreating to lazy labels that stereotype individuals. And you can start now. I can be the very first person that you meet and create no assumptions about. Let's start. Hi, my name is Hongyan Phan. I am 17 years old, and I am from San Diego, California. It's nice to meet you. Let me tell you more about myself. Thank you.
Great job, Hung-An. We will now be taking a 30-minute intermission, and that concludes the first half of our speakers. So why don't we give one more round of applause for everyone, all right? Amazing, amazing job. In this time, please feel free to talk to some new faces, and if you got any tickets for the food, make sure to grab all that food right now. Thank you guys, and see you in 30. A few reminders. Please remain silent. The video crew will pick up even the smallest sounds, which may ruin the recording.
And also, please stay in your seat and only exit if you need to in between the speakers. Thank you so much.
Now up first is our keynote speaker, Mr. Aaron Pillow. Aaron is a communication specialist and has spent his career across various forms of media, such as ESPN, CBS Sports Network, iHeartMedia, and the NBA. Aaron has a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of South Carolina Upstate and a master's in peace and justice from USD. Intersectional community has always been the center of Aaron's career and work. Aaron now lives in Singapore with his wife, Chloe, and loves to write about how community is shared through food, culture, and travel. We are deeply, deeply grateful for the journalist, scholar, and community leader, Aaron Pillow, for traveling all the way across the wide Pacific to be here with us today. Aaron's talk will reflect on the gift of community. All the way from Singapore, please give us a very warm welcome to Aaron Pillow.
Thank you. I'm really humbled and honored to be here with you all. I first want to acknowledge my wife, Chloe, who's in Singapore. Without her, I would not be here today. I want to talk today about my probably favorite word, the word that I use most than any other word in my vocabulary. That is the word community. I want to talk about how I owe my career to community, but I really want to talk about how community is unavoidable. Before I do that, I'm going to show you my favorite tweet. I love Twitter. I know it's terrible, but this is my favorite tweet right here. There's a lot of wisdom in it. It says, I'm not self-made. I'm community-made. I'm family-made. I'm land-made. I'm ancestor-made. I'm made up of everything and everyone that has made me exist outside of just myself. I really want you to think about this. I'm going to take you back to the fall of 2016. I'm sitting at a computer in Bristol, Connecticut on the campus of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. I'm 2.5 years into my dream job. I'm working on shows like SportsCenter, NFL Live. I'm working on various college football shows, and I'm really struggling to believe that any of it means anything. Again, it's the fall of 2016. The country had just come out of one of its most contentious and probably the most partisan election of my lifetime. And the result was really leaving me with this feeling of emptiness. On top of that, I had already been questioning what I should be doing. That day, those memories was more than 6 years ago, but it's a memory that stays with me even now today. You see, the career that I tried to build has always been centered around community in some form or another. From my time as a radio host, from my time as a writer, working in television, community has always tried to be something I tried to center. My career actually started in a small town in Spartanburg, South Carolina, on the campus of a small school called the University of South Carolina Upstate. One of my best friends, Jim, he helped me land a job at an ESPN radio affiliate in the area, and this was really exciting to me. I'm this young black Latino kid originally from Brooklyn, New York, raised in the South, and now I'm arguing with college football fans on the radio, all while failing to sell radio time in a town where the Ku Klux Klan still ran around. Things were good, but I had no prospects of a job after college. I'd filled out a bunch of applications and had 0 bites, and it had gotten so bad, my mom was like, you can come home for a few months if you need to. But things changed relatively quickly. The fall of 2013, we're hosting the radio show at a local bar in the area. We used to keep this big sign that said ESPN Spartanburg. We're hosting this live show, and a listener named Alan comes up, and he says, ESPN Spartanburg, I'm from Connecticut. I'm like, that's awesome, please go away. Alan comes back a second time, and he says, I used to be neighbors with a certain ESPN commentator. Me, certain Alan is drunk. I'm like, that's awesome, please go away. Alan comes back a third time, and he says, I'd love to buy you a drink and talk sports after the show. And for me, as a broke college kid, free food and free beer, that was cool with me. So we sit down, have a drink, have some dinner, and Alan tells me how he's built this life as a mechanical contractor in Connecticut. Now he's living in San Diego. And he says, you seem like a decent kid. Why don't you give me your resume? I may know somebody who knows somebody, and I'd be willing to pass it along. I can't promise anything, but I'd be willing to do so. So I give him my resume, and that was on a Friday. Monday, I'm in my dorm, I'm still in my pajamas in bed, and my phone rings. My phone rings, and I pick it up, and I hear a wonderful voice on the other side of the phone, and I hear this woman say, "Hi, my name is Susie. I work in global HR at ESPN. Are you looking for a job?" Me? Absolutely. She says, "Well, I'm headed out of the country for a week. If you want to have this conversation when I get back." I said, "Hold on. If you want to tell me what job to look for, I'll fill out an application right now." So she tells me what to apply for, and over the next 2 months, I go through a lot of interviews and a flight up to Bristol, Connecticut, and a few days before I'm set to graduate from USC Upstate, I'm offered a job to go work at ESPN. I am not self-made. I've been very privileged and blessed and lucky, really, to live many lives since then. I've gotten to work for ESPN and CBS, and I've worked in radio. I got to work for the NBA, for the Los Angeles Clippers, and community has really been at the center along the way. Community was the real reason why I left my original career path. Community was the reason why I decided to pack up everything, leaving New York for a second time, packing up everything into my car, leaving New York to move to California alone. But it was community that showed me I wasn't alone. I had friends like Savannah and Ashley, Greg, my uncle David and his family, who all gave me a place to rest my head along the journey in the then biggest moment of my life. It was community that was waiting for me here in California. As one of my best friends, Teddy, his wife Crystal, and their 2 kids gave me a place to stay for over a year. It was community that turned friends into family because it was them, Crystal and Teddy, who became more than my friends. They became more than my pastors. They became my family. It was community that was shown to me through their children, who became my nephews. They showed me the importance of children and community, the importance of revisiting my own inner childhood, and the importance of having a childlike imagination in really imagining a better and more equitable space. It was community that was here for me in San Diego. When I arrived, in the toughest moment of my life, my cousin Jordan was here. He opened up his home. He opened up his heart. He supported me. He loved me. He was there for me in the toughest moment of my life and supported me through my time in grad school at the University of San Diego. At the University of San Diego, I met great people. Community showed itself. I met Dr. Amy Carpenter, who showed me the importance of peace building and peacemaking in the midst of my pain. It was community that was there in the women that I met, women like Nandita, Jasmine, Hannah, Madison, so many more, women from black and brown spaces, women from queer spaces that showed me just how limited my gaze was on the idea of equity and showed me what real progress has to look like. That is community. And just a reminder, I am not self-made. Like I said, I've been very privileged and lucky and blessed along the way, but most importantly, I've been communally made. I am the prayers of my ancestors. I'm the prayers of my grandmothers. I am the sacrifice of my parents leaving the Bronx and Brooklyn, New York. I am the ever-enduring love, grace, patience, guidance of my black mother who raised 2 black boys. I am the love and guidance of my father who still advises me to this day. I am the unbreakable bond of friendship, loyalty, and love that is my best friend and my brother. I come from the love of black women who have healed me, the black women in my life, past, present, and future, women like Reese and my Aunt Michelle, who've shown me how to live freer in ways than I ever understood before. I am the 15+ years of friendship, love, intelligence, wisdom, compassion, and support of my amazing wife who really wanted me to be here today. The thing about community is it is unavoidable. It's everywhere. It's everything we participate with. It's in the environment. It's with the animals. But that's a beautiful thing. I really want you to think about who has helped make you, you. Think about the people that have laid their hands on you, that have helped you be the person that you are today. Think about the intersection of the identities that you all hold. The students here, you're more than just students. You are musicians, you're artists, you're teammates, you're athletes, you are friends, you're cousins, you are sons, daughters, children of the families that you have both chosen and by blood. That is community. And how we build community matters, both in theory and in practice, intimately and deeply. We tend to think of words like social justice and equity as these messianic tasks that are only enhanced by the selfish egos we're taught to carry. It was author Bell Hooks that said, "I'm often struck by the dangerous narcissism fostered by spiritual rhetoric that focuses so much on individual self-improvement and so little to the practice of love within the context of community." You see, community and social justice and equity have to be more than just words, because for many of us, it is a means of survival. Those in black and brown spaces understand this deeply. Those in queer spaces understand this deeply. Women around the world understand this deeply, that community is essential on this journey of life. And building community has to be the choice that we make, no matter the career paths that we choose. And doing this is going to take a certain amount of introspection and intentionality. It's going to take trust and respect. In terms of introspection, we have to be willing to ask, why do our communities look the way that they do? Be aware of the privileged spaces that you come from. Be aware of the spaces that you're stepping into. Always be willing to ask who is in the room, and more importantly, be willing to ask who is not in the room, because usually those questions go hand in hand. It was easy for me when I was at ESPN to step into a room and see that I was the only black person in the space. It wasn't until an ex-girlfriend of mine pointed out that those same spaces had little to no women at all. It was because of her I had to expand my gaze on what I thought equity was. It was because of her I had to be honest about the good old boy system that I was participating with and benefiting from. You see, building community is going to take a certain amount of introspection about the communities, about the systems that we're coerced into participating with, whether this is racism, ageism, sexism, homophobia, or any form of injustice against any kind of people. It's going to take a certain amount of introspection. It's going to take a certain amount of intentionality. It's going to take a certain amount of vulnerability with one another. We live in a society fueled by capitalism that tells us that we live in a hierarchy, a rat race, in which we need to climb over one another to achieve the things that we want and need. I would urge you to dismiss the lie that is the hierarchy and really think about building communal spaces as roundtables, full of empowerment, full of acknowledgement, understanding that everyone who steps into the space brings something of value because they exist. As people with privilege, we must be willing to ask, does my voice need to be the loudest in the room? I was at the University of San Diego in an international negotiations class, and we're in a simulated negotiation in like week 2 of the class. We're split into 2 groups, and after some ideation, I guess just because I have a big mouth, I'm elected to be the spokesperson for my group. I give this long-winded, elegant, eloquent, amazing answer that I would like to include was right. I don't remember what the answer was, but I do like to remember the fact that I felt an immense amount of pride knowing that the other group won't have a rebuttal. I remember my group feeling like we had an immense amount of pride knowing that the other group won't have a rebuttal. Professor Michael Fryer says to the second group, does anybody have a rebuttal for what Aaron said? And a woman named Zoya raises her hand. And she goes, well, Aaron's answer was nice, but we now won't know the other beautiful answers in the room because Aaron has purposely suffocated the space and dominated it with his masculinity. The room went quiet because everyone realized that Zoya had just gutted me like a fish. But Zoya was right. Zoya is right. What does it mean to take a step back? The goal is not to be the first or the loudest in the room. The goal is to use my privilege and my proximity to privilege to amplify the agency of voices in the room that have been screaming for ages, but we have refused to listen to. The goal is to use my privilege and my access to privilege to help dismantle the systems that have prevented people from being here, from having a platform. There's no such thing as a voiceless people. We must be willing to question why those without resources continue to be silenced and wonder how we can use our shared privilege to dismantle those systems while sharing our limited power. And we must be willing to do this while respecting the agency of communities that may not want our help. We need to understand that privilege does not equate to credibility. People know who they are. They understand their situations better than outsiders. It was Dr. Kimberly Thomas McNair at Stanford who said, people understand who they are if only by the condition in which they are treated by the systems they participate with. We have to be willing to say, although that I have a certain amount of privilege, I may not be the most suited person to help lead this conversation or help lead this group of people, but I can use my privilege to amplify the agency of someone who is more qualified. Community is a faithful act. You're choosing to trust the space. You're choosing to say, again, while my voice may be loud and maybe because I do have privilege, maybe I'm not best suited to lead this space. We have to be willing to look at our own privilege, willing to look at our own centerness, and realize that there are other people in this space who may be better suited. That is community. Community is everywhere. This takes time. Community takes time. Building trust takes time. It was that same Professor Michael Fryer that used to remind us it was important to waste time with the right people. In a world that rushes us along, it pays off to sit down and hear the stories of the people in your community. It pays off to hear the humanity and the journeys of people who are different than you. Sure, it worked out for me being there with Alan and getting lucky to help launch a career, but more importantly, it's paid off for me in ways that I've gotten to sit down with communities all over the world who share their stories with me, who share their journeys with me, and show me what a more equitable future can look like every day. The students here, the newer generation, as you have a vaster imagination than any of the previous generations before you, I challenge you to use that imagination in really thinking about how you can build a better and more equitable future. Understand that your voice is needed and understand that the opportunity to do so doesn't happen after college. It doesn't start in college. The opportunity to build a more equitable space is here right in front of you, here at Cathedral Catholic High School. Be intentional in your decisions. Be accountable to one another and hold each other accountable. Be accountable to one another as students. Be accountable to your fellow classmates. Be accountable to your friends and your family members. Hold each other accountable. May this administration be accountable to you, and may you hold them accountable. And may we understand that through the differences in our gender identities, race, nationalities, the difference in our generational age gaps, that we learn together with and from each other. That together we create a new language that we can understand in more equitable ways. I don't mean this in any cliche way. A diversity in community brings a diversity of ideas and thoughts, which brings a diversity of answers which we would have never achieved any other way. Always be willing to look around and question how our community spaces can and should be more diverse. I come from the church. I'm well-versed in church culture, and I speak the language. I lived with two theologians. I know the church language, and one of the questions I've always been taught to ask is, where are the saints? I got my master's degree at the Kroc School at the University of San Diego, a space that lacks diversity, and one of the things that I used to ask and still ask is, where are the saints? Where are the black and brown saints? Where are the queer saints? Where are the women saints? Here in San Diego on Kumeyaay land, where are the native and indigenous saints? The new generation, I hope you are always willing to ask of the spaces that you're in, where are the saints? May the voices of black and brown communities be uplifted. May the voices of queer and trans communities be uplifted. May the voices of communities with those that are disabled be uplifted. May our communities look diverse, not just in theory, but in actuality as well. I want to remind you, I am not self-made. Luckily, none of us are. Thank you.
Great job, Ms. Pillow. Next up, we have Natalia Velayuden. She's a sophomore from Vista, yet this is only her first year at Cathedral. She loves expressing herself to the New Dawns community, and outside of school, she loves reading, writing, and running. In college, she plans to major in electrical engineering. And today, her TED Talk is about the power of writing. please welcome to the TEDx stage, Natalia Verayuden.
I don't know who I am or what I want to be, but secretly, if writing broadened dough, I think I could succeed. I blink. My tears leave crinkled pages and smudged ink. The simple power of a journal. Emotions let rest on the page, free me from their cage. From disgrace to an embrace, in my own mind, I love the perfectly imperfect because first, God loved me. From mundane to marvelous, this is my place, my space to share to my heart's desire. Some say it's stupid, but hey, it's therapeutic. If words were like wings, I'd no longer be the caged canary in the coal mine, no longer the ensnared skylark singing sweet songs. I would soar on wings like eagles, my strength and hope renewed by Him who set me free. Let me speak simply, grant me that grace. Give me the moment that we don't ever seem to have. Let me look upon your face. I will not flee in times of uncertainty. Read my words and feel my rhythm, hear my tune. Our generation is cursed by the blessing of instantaneity. Deep conversations shared through text bubbles and not face-to-face because there's an emoji for every emotion. We no longer write letters or even know how. We've moved on, advanced to WYD. And are you free? How can we sum ourselves up with so little? It's too easy. Too often, we distort reality and ignore the facts, trying to cover our sinful tracks. False narratives and biased views. History was written by the victors. But lost people are more than just tallies, more than just names engraved upon a wall. But that's all that remains when memory fades. Johannes Gutenberg, his invention ignited the Renaissance, a revival, rebirth, like a phoenix from the ashes. Legacies live on in print, calling out to us. Like Anne Frank, countless days spent in the hiding place, no talking, no noise, just the slight scritch of a pen, chronicling a testament to survival. 30 million copies shaped a generation, and the whole world learned her story. Like MLK, he pleads, break the silence of the night. The calling to speak is often an occasion of agony, but we must speak. We must speak with all of the humility that is appropriate to our limited vision, but we must speak. His words are like a glorious church bell tolling truth like light to dark corners. Words captured when worlds were different, let us delve into distant times. I beg you, preserve yours. You may never know who needs to hear them. The harshest critic you'll ever find stares from the mirror. So pick up your pen and find your voice. If you're struggling, like I was, start here. What is your truth? Thank you.
Up next is Gable Creek. Gable is a senior and will be attending USD this coming fall. Gable plans on getting a degree in computer science and cybersecurity. Gable has always been around computers and loves learning about them. Gable's talk will be about why you should learn how to code. Please welcome to the TEDx stage, Gable Creek.
When I was 12 years old, I went to a Los Angeles Angels game with my brother Brian. And while I don't see Brian very often, we're still pretty close. While we were waiting for first pitch, we talked about a lot of things. One of these things was job and occupation. I was curious what my brother did, and I didn't know, so I decided to ask. A straightforward question that I thought I had asked revealed a not-so-straightforward answer. My brother told me he couldn't tell me. But he did tell me that it had something to do with code, and he had to change his password once a week. So this piqued my curiosity. I saw my brother as a spy. I had only seen such a job secrecy in movies talking about James Bond and Jason Bourne. So that weekend, I looked up what is computer science and how to code. I was curious, and that curiosity led me to the Harvard edX program, Harvard's entire computer science course online for free. So I signed up. And through the months of me taking this course, learning the fundamentals and the basics of computer programming, I learned how to code little games. And those games got interesting, but when that got pretty boring to do, I started thinking more, okay, how can I make code benefit me? I'd spent all this time learning how to code, so how can I benefit from it? Well, I started to notice problems in my life that I didn't like. I didn't like waking up to an alarm clock, for example. So I decided to program lights to turn on and off at a certain time to wake me up. Another thing I decided to do was I coded a Raspberry Pi, which, if you don't know what a Raspberry Pi is, it's the image on the right, and it's a small programmable computer. This particular Raspberry Pi, I decided to code to block ads on devices connected to my Wi-Fi network. So when I did this, I realized that there's endless possibilities to what code can be. Bill Gates says we're not close to building the dream PC. All of you have used a computer at some capacity, may it be a phone, tablet, or PC. So we can all agree that they're pretty capable already. But imagine what computers will become in 10, 20 years' time. I didn't fully get the scope, the gravity the code had on the world until my family took a trip to New York City. And when we were in New York City, my family and I were walking through Times Square on our way to go do whatever my mom had planned for us to do that morning. And in doing so, I looked around at all the screens, the taxis, the people on their phones. The city was packed. It was mid-November, so everyone was there for the Thanksgiving Day parade. And while I didn't notice it in the moment, when we got back to the hotel, I realized that code's everywhere. If code didn't exist, taxi machines would go back to be mechanically reliant, and the smartphones we know and love today wouldn't exist. The ease of access would be taken away if code wasn't a thing. Code is truly in the center of today's modern world. Every industry is touched by code in some way. The medical field, their machines, the education, everything is touched by code. Steve Jobs says that everyone should learn a computer language, and I agree with him. The International Data Corporation says that only 0.3% of the world's population are in software developer jobs. So out of around 8 billion or so people living in the world today, that's around 20 million people. And look at what those 20 million people were able to make. Everything we have today has been made by 20 million people. Our modern world has been forged by only 20 million. Imagine if that number was closer to 1%, what the world would look like. And the people that have these jobs keep them. People in specialty fields like software development, cybersecurity, data science have a 95% employment rate. There are more jobs than there are people to fill them. And these jobs make it worth your while. Depending on your experience level and your education, you can make anywhere from $40,000 to $110,000. I'm just in high school, but that sounds pretty good to me. So I encourage you to find your reason to code. Find the thing that piques your curiosity. Maybe it's this talk. Or maybe, similar to me, you go out on Google and you look it up. You take the Harvard course. Or you just start tinkering with things. If nothing else, I hope this talk piqued your curiosity. When I learned how to code, I became a problem solver. I stopped settling for the problem's good enough, I can live with it, and started thinking, okay, can I make something that can fix it? Can I program something that'll make that nuance go away? When I learned programming, my brain, I taught myself how to think. I re-taught myself how to think. So when you learn programming, you won't be disappointed. Thank you very much.
Great job, Gable, and hopefully that inspires everyone to learn how to code. Next up is Kalani Aldolfo. Kalani is a sophomore from Cathedral, and his favorite thing about Cathedral is being on the rowing team. In college, he plans to either study business or law. Please welcome out to the stage, Kalani Aldolfo.
We learn every day. A few months ago, I made the mistake of going on my friend's bike without any brakes. And well, it ended up a little something like this. I'd gone downhill, I accelerated, and I did what most people do, slow down and press on the brakes. However, the brakes on this bike didn't feel like working. So I had to choose between two options, either to ride to the bottom of the hill or crash into a bush. Eventually, I crashed into a bush, and the aftermath looked a little something like this. Yeah, not too pleasant. Now, why am I telling you this crazy story? I want you to know that we learn every day, whether it's learning how the parts of a cell function or a life lesson, such as making sure a bike has brakes the next time you go on it. We learn every day. However, when it comes to learning in school, learning is very different for students. Students are being told what to learn and how to learn. For the majority of students that have other passions outside of school, they're being educated out of their passions. That being said, if students learn in different ways and have different passions, how can schools accompany those differences? Hi, my name is Kalani Adolfo, and I am here today to answer the question, how have schools diminished learning? I have been a student for a while. In fact, I've spent over 11 years in school. I do 180 days or 1,080 hours of school per year. I have been taught in various ways by over 30 teachers, and I've learned a lot. I've forgotten a lot too, but I've learned that schools can improve learning for students. There are multiple ways of learning. In fact, I'd like to mention the three main ones: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Visual learners are those that take in information by seeing the material they're given. One survey reveals that 65%, or 13 out of every 20 people, are visual learners. Even I consider myself as a visual learner. Next is auditory. Auditory learners tend to absorb information by listening to or repeating information to understand a topic. These learners have enhanced critical thinking skills and a greater probability at correctly reciting information. Lastly is kinesthetic. Kinesthetic learners are hands-on, and they learn by collaborating, they learn by touching, feeling, using their 5 senses to understand information. Every person learns differently, whether it's by visually, auditorily, or kinesthetically learning. But when we look at schools, students are being treated as a blank canvas, and that canvas must depict the same drawing for each and every student. I have done many sports: baseball, jiu-jitsu, rowing, swimming, the list goes on. My parents would encourage my passions, and I couldn't thank them enough for their support. By definition, passion is a strong liking or desire for something. This strong liking that we describe as passion is what keeps the drive to learn alive. But schools, they don't incorporate passion, they standardize students. And when students are standardized, it's easier for schools to manage students, which leaves passion to foil. Whether it's encouraging passion to the 71% of children that participate in a sport once a year, or the 49% of students that participate in music education, encouraging passion is vital for a progressive future. But this so-called future has remained in the past by an education system that has remained with the same principles needed to make factory workers, which isn't a surprise because students learn in a systematic way. They're controlled by bells, they're lined up in straight rows, they're told to be quiet unless they want to speak, and they're given information to throw away on a test. Input, output, are we human or are we machines? There's one thing I've learned from school: students are being programmed to learn in this way. In fact, the word student originates from the Latin word studere, which translates to be eager or enthusiastic to study. For schools, the goal should be to encourage students becoming eager and passionate about their classes. Lastly, schools must innovate and have students collaborate more with each other. 86% of employees blame lack of collaboration as the top reason for workplace failures, which isn't a surprise because going all the way back to schooling, students are driven by collaboration, rather to achieve a good grade. We all have a past, but our past does not have to define us. Schools have been doing the same thing the same way for a long time, and schools no longer have to have the title of being quote-unquote outdated. As Miss Conroy, the principal here at Cathedral Catholic, advises, we need to always be looking forward, not backwards, forwards, especially when it comes to school. If these changes do not happen, diminished learning and the failure to support the passions of students will continue to persist. If these changes do happen, I believe that students will dictate their education in the future and have the utmost ability to shape their identity. Whether the solution is to focus on more collaboration, encouraging passion, or diversity of thought, the children of today are the future of tomorrow, and we must guide them in the right direction. I may be only in high school, but I've understood the impact education has had on me and my peers and the change that is demanded for the future. Walt Disney once said, and I quote, "The greatest natural resource we have is the minds of our children. And if we can find ways to collaborate, innovate, and cherish the passions of students throughout the classroom, then maybe learning will fulfill its purpose in school." Thank you very much.
Up next is Sofia Arriaga Balsa. Sofia is from Mexico City, and this is her first year living in San Diego and attending Cathedral Catholic High School. In her free time, she loves to go to the beach with family, read, and spend time outdoors. Sofia plans on studying law in college, and she will be giving her talk on why you all should read. Please welcome to the stage, Sofia.
Ever since humans have existed, the stories we've told have grown alongside us. When books were invented at first, they were not accessible to most people, but shortly after societies evolved, they became highly approachable. There are so many benefits to reading. The very existence of books changed the world and can change yours too. Reading is one of my favorite hobbies, and today I will be talking about the importance of books and why I think everyone should read. I will be focusing on how the impact of books essentially made our society what it is today and how they truly changed the world. Besides the fact that books have proven to positively affect our health, reading allows us to experience the lives of others and implement the lessons learned on our own. Storytelling in itself has been a basic practice for as long as humans have existed, and I believe that our love for entertainment is rooted in our love for stories. Now, more than ever, entertainment comes in a variety of forms. But despite the great diversity we have access to, I believe books are entirely set apart from every category. What makes them stand out is their complete freedom, and how when we read, creating the world is up to us. In comparison to digital media, when something is visual, it is completely defined. So the process to create anything excludes the viewer because we are already seeing a finished product. Books expand our imagination further because we actually become a part of the story. They are meant to be and should be enjoyed, and there's a variety of ways which could work best for you. Personally, I prefer to read physical copies of books. However, reading can come in a lot of different formats, such as digital books like Kindle or audiobooks as well. The way we learn and the way we enjoy certain things is different for everyone, so finding which works best for you can greatly improve your experience. When I was little, my school had a library where you were allowed to borrow any book you chose, and this allowed me to discover one of my favorite books at the time, and it was a series by Chris Colfer called The Land of Stories. My school presented books as a joyful experience and something that was meant to be cherished. Especially as kids, and when I was younger, there were so many things, feelings that didn't seem tangible. I couldn't identify them or relate them to meaning because I didn't know what they were. But books allowed me to uncover the answers with words I couldn't have come up with at the time. So, what I mean with this is that the books you read will always end up enhancing your life, helping guide you through your every journey. This is pretty much how books changed my life, but now I want to talk about how they changed life overall. In the 1400s, the invention of the printing press assisted one of the greatest revolutions in society. The spread of knowledge, discoveries, and ideas spread faster and further than ever before, and literacy rates increased rapidly. Printing became cheaper and more accessible, and because of the low cost, more and more people had access to books. Because of its contributions, the printing press became and is one of the greatest and most significant inventions of our time. However, it wasn't until the 19th century that it was common for literature to be divided into works of fiction and nonfiction, with subgenres in between. Nowadays, fiction is greatly attributed as the most popular form of literature, but the question is why? Research indicates that captivating stories are the most successful at breaking down barriers by challenging stereotypes and allowing people to have more open minds about different opinions and topics, permitting us to experience the world through a different lens. In his book, A Dance with Dragons, George R. R. Martin states that a reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. Because of the books I've read, I've been able to see what this means for myself. In my first adventures with books, I followed Alex and Connor as they left the world behind and explored a land made up of stories. Most recently, I followed Victor onto Walton's ship while he continuously regrets the life of his creation. I've seen the deterioration of Dorian's portrait and his inconvenient friendship with Lord Henry. I explored alongside Christine through the cellars of the opera and saw Gatsby's persistent hope in the green light. The books I've read have shown me the worlds of others, pretty much impossible worlds that exist only through the pages. But with every turn and every new sentence, I am left with ways to better my own world, with lessons I'll never forget. There's an infinity of information we have access to, especially in our generation, but I truly believe books offer us the greatest opportunity to learn. Whenever I see people who don't enjoy reading, it's typically because it has been presented as a chore in the past. But the thing is, we cannot be forced to enjoy something. I believe books have designated purposes and time frames that are suitable for what we go through. So I can promise you the perfect book is waiting for you in the moment you need it the most. With this being said, if you have had a previous negative experience, I encourage you to set it aside. There is so much to be learned from books, and you will find that once you start reading, it can genuinely be one of the most rewarding experiences in life. We can learn to be more empathetic, more open, and far more aware and understanding of the world and people that surround us. Thank you so much.
Great job, Sophia. Last but not least is Vaughn Stenjum. Vaughn is a sophomore from La Mesa, and what she likes about Cathedral is the very close-knit community and the drama team. Vaughn is very involved in drama and sailing at Cathedral. They hope to attend a college and major in directing. In Vaughn's talk, she talks about diversity in directing. Please welcome to the stage Vaughn Stenjum.
What's your favorite movie? Shout it out. Okay, lots of different answers. Great. Mine's Captain America Civil War. Well, I actually went and asked some of my friends. What's your favorite movie?
Spaceballs.
Pitch Perfect.
Tangled. Whiplash.
10 Things I Hate About You.
50 First Dates with Adam Sandler.
It's Spider-Man Far From Home. Top Gun.
Ratatouille. I know that was pretty fast. So here's the list. They're all pretty good movies, right? But think about it. Off the top of your head, do you know who the director of any of these movies are? Maybe not. So if you don't know these people, it's totally okay. But I want you to try to notice something. In particular, look at their photos. What do all of these directors have in common? Say it with me now. They are all white men. Yeah. Well, a little bit about me. From a young age, I've always been interested in performing, and when I was young, I wanted to be an actor. That was until about 6th grade when I watched Gallery Star Wars Mandalorian. It's a super interesting show about the creative process, and after watching it, I decided I wanted to be a film director. Of course, not knowing at the time, it's quite literally the hardest one to succeed in, but that's not the point. Searching director Anish Shanakti once said, "Growing up, watching my favorite films, those films never had people who looked like me in them. While films about race and culture are obviously important, what's really important to focus representation in are the everyday films, i.e. superhero, action-adventure, horror, you name it. These films have historically lacked representation and diversity on all fronts. But particularly, film directing is one of the least diverse aspects of the industry and affects diversity in film overall. And this is why we need to diversify directing." If you watched the 2020 Oscars, you probably remember the discussions that happened surrounding diversity when the nominations first came out. Well, this conversation actually began in 2016 when the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite began trending on Twitter. While the Oscars have worked to rectify their failings since the blatant call-out, the one category that is still lacking is the Best Director category. So currently, the awards have been running for 93 years, and in that time, 400 directors have been nominated. Out of those 400, 7 have been women and 6 have been black men. That statistic looks like this. You know, stories are essential to society and culture, so it can be problematic when we get them from only one perspective. Because of this narrow view, there are many people and cultures who are underrepresented or represented in a harmful way. It's crazy to think about, isn't it? An industry viewed as progressive is in fact not very progressive at all. Directors have a hand in almost every part of the creative process, and so it makes sense that they have a huge effect on overall cast diversity. It's been shown that directors of color often have movies with more diverse casts than those movies directed by white men. One director who has recently gotten a lot of backlash for casting only white actors is Tim Burton. While his films are fan-loved and critically acclaimed, after Samuel L. Jackson's comments, fans started looking deeper and expressing their concerns via Twitter. When asked to comment on diversity, Tim Burton said, "Things either call for things or they don't," basically dismissing the question altogether. But what happens when people other than white men control the narrative? Well, we've seen the positive effects recently through movies such as Shang-Chi, Black Panther, and most recently, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which just won 7 Oscars, including Best Director. You should go watch it. These films have made important and impactful strides, but an entire industry doesn't change with just 3 movies. Currently, women control around 1/3 of the personal finances in the US, 11 trillion, give or take. By 2030, which is surprisingly closer than you think it is, women are expected to control $30 trillion of personal finances within the US. This means that women will be funding more things, i.e., movies. Women will want to invest in things they can see themselves represented in, so no longer should the market cater to the white male point of view. Because of this, diversity will be favorable for both personal and professional reasons. So why not? Let's take this bigger. Why does film matter? Why should we care? Both valid questions. I have 2 words: unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is a form of social stereotyping developed by our brains, oftentimes without our knowledge. One thing that can perpetuate harmful unconscious bias is film. This is because film is easily digestible by all types of learners. Auditory learners, visual learners, and kinesthetic learners can all easily grasp the concepts shown on film, meaning the morals quite literally become ingrained in our minds. Film affects our thoughts, our opinions, our decisions, so we need to care about it, even if we don't want to. Now, hopefully what you're asking yourself at this point is, well, what can I do? That's a great question. As shown through the Oscars, when people speak up, things change. So, speak up, either through social media, or, the way that's more interesting in my opinion, watching movies with diverse directors. Now, you may not know where to start, so I've compiled a list of movies directed by women and people of color that I hope you check out when you get the chance. And, maybe the next time you go to see a movie, ask yourself, who's the director? Thank you.
They did great.
Good evening. My name is Ellie Carroll, and I'm a junior here at Cathedral. And I'm very lucky to say that I'm one of the lead student organizers of this lovely event. I'd like to start off by just saying how incredibly proud I am of these people standing behind me, of all of these talented speakers and these committee members who have spent countless hours preparing for right now. We are so excited that we are finally here and we are part of the first inaugural TEDx here at Cathedral. Can we give a hand for that? This has been a vision in the making for a long time. And I'd just like to talk about how I'm so surprised that an English assignment last spring, turned into a nationally recognized event here at Cathedral. Like that is amazing that we're able to stand right here in front of you on a live stream through TEDx. That's pretty cool. The mission of TEDx is to be a catalyst for spreading ideas that change our world. And I hope that you are able to hear some new perspectives, hear some new ideas tonight. I have a goal for each of you. By the time you walk out of here, I want you to think of these 3 things. I really hope that you met 3 new people today, whether it be through these cool name badges, the people sitting at your table, or someone you met walking in. I hope that you made a connection and you were able to meet someone new. So let's hope that happens. Our goal for tonight is to provide a forum for our classmates and teachers to share their personal stories. A famous TEDx speaker, Brene Brown, she says, the most powerful stories may be the ones we tell ourselves. So I hope you just remember those words, and the next time you hear TED, think of those words and think of the story that you are telling. I have a couple thank yous tonight, but first I'd like to start off with some awards we have. So first off, we have a committee that is made up of student speakers and Ms. Fiore, Mr. Smith, a couple other teachers, and we've been meeting monthly. We've spent countless hours, a lot more recently, but I've got to say that getting to wear a headset tonight with this cool little mic, that makes it all worth it. Like, that is the reason I'm standing here tonight, is because I got to wear a cool mic. That's why I'm here. No, I'm just kidding. But that made all of that hard work worth it. I've got to tell you, that made it worth it. So, first off, there's someone here tonight that's been just beyond amazing. They've exceeded all of our expectations. They've gone above and beyond, and I'd like to bring out Mr. Matthew Korninski right now, because let me tell you, he is amazing. He has worked so incredibly hard, and he's our volunteer of the night because he has made this all possible. He has put his blood, sweat, and tears into this event, and let's give it up for Matthew. Thank you. Secondly, we have a special speaker to spotlight tonight. We want to recognize this speaker. Every speaker has brought something unique and important to our program, but one special dawn has stood out. So please help me give a big round of applause to our speaker in the spotlight, Miss Sophia. Congratulations. Good job. She's so cute. I love her. All right, now I do have some thank yous because first off, I'd like to thank you, my audience here tonight. You guys have been amazing, so supportive, so incredible, and we could not have a TEDx event without our audience. So let's give a big round of applause for you guys. You should know that we're only allowed to have 100 guests for our first TEDx event through TEDx. That's a requirement. So you guys are very important people. You are VIP status. You were here for the first inaugural TED, and I hope next year I'm able to stand here and see you again. So that's super cool. Next, I'd like to thank Mr. Rodriguez and the facilities team for helping us set up, clean up, hang all our balloons. I'd like to thank our student and parent volunteers for all the hard work they've put in. They've come here early, they've come set up, come out lunch. They're amazing. I'd like to thank the families who donated events, who have donated items. We weren't allowed to charge for tickets, but we've been able to put on some really cool decorations, a cool TEDx sign. Like, that's super cool. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd like to give a special thank you to Ms. Grieven for assisting with decorations and refreshments. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Ms. Conroy for being so supportive and allowing us to have the first ever TEDx event here at Cathedral, and she even came up with our theme, In Search of Truth. So let's give her a big hand. I'd also like to thank Mr. Matt Nguyen, who's back in our tech crew back here. He's the one who gave me the super cool mic, so let's give him a round of applause for that. We'd also like to thank Dr. Williams in the English department, who are sitting right over here. Let's give it up for English. We love them. And finally, I'd like to say a very big special thank you to our TEDx committee and our speakers who have absolutely killed it tonight. We would not be here without them. Okay. Now we have one very last special thank you, and that is first to Mr. Smith, who has helped organize this event. I'd want to talk about a very special woman who is one of the reasons we are all here tonight. I'd like to bring out Ms. Fiore, who is not only a role model to me, but to our whole committee. And this I can stand here and honestly say to you guys, this would not happen without her. She is the reason we are all here tonight. This has been her vision for over 5 years. She has dedicated her time without any extra pay because she loves her students, she loves TED, and she loves being a mentor to these young students, and she has made such a big difference in our lives. So let's give a standing ovation to Ms. Fiore, please. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate all your love and support, and thank you for spending your evening with us. We are so appreciative, and thank you so much for coming to our first ever TEDx Cathedral Catholic High School. Good night.